Hi, my name is Lauren Hendrickson. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with addiction, depression, codependency, and just general self-control. I grew up in a home where my father and mother both loved Jesus and tried to show us how to live a Christian life. The Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. That's kind of been my life's motto. I'm guessing my parents probably clung to this verse for years of my life. Thank God that he truly does fulfill his promises. Started dabbling in drugs at an early age. I'm pretty sure I was 13 the first time I smoked pot. Pot led to alcohol, alcohol led to ecstasy, ecstasy led to acid, acid led to cocaine, so on and so on. Then I met a guy. He introduced me to methamphetamines. This was it for me. In a matter of 3 days, I quit my job, dropped out of school, broke up with my boyfriend of 5 years, and went to live with this guy in a hotel room. I had become completely addicted in 3 days. My life was such a mess. Years went on and my addiction became stronger and stronger. When I first started using, I smoked it. I told myself I would never shoot up. But did that change? Within 2 years, I was shooting up 8 to 10 times a day. I sold drugs to keep up my habit. I was in and out of jail more times than I can count. After my boyfriend of 7 years went to prison, I became even more enthralled in the drug lifestyle. I would sell thousands of dollars worth of meth daily and inject even more. My life was so completely out of control, I thought there was absolutely no escape. One day in March of 2008, my life was such a mess that I had nothing to do but look up. I was living in my car. My family wanted nothing to do with me. All the money that I had made from selling drugs was gone, and I lost my plug. I was completely helpless and hopeless. I remember closing my eyes and saying to God that I can't do this anymore. He had to take control. I didn't want to live my life like this anymore. I had not prayed in years. I was really desperate for change. 2 days later, I went on a spree. I was high, stole a Mustang and some credit cards, and I've been driving around Northeast Missouri, using them all over the place. I was in Chillicothe, Missouri at a Walmart when I noticed the Walmart employees looking at me. First, I thought it was paranoia. Then I realized as I walked out that that wasn't the case at all. I got in the Mustang with them following me out the door, talking on the phone. Soon after I pulled out of my spot, a state trooper pulled in the parking lot. I gunned it to the highway. A state trooper was close behind, and I was going well over 100 miles an hour. Then I realized I was about out of gas. That was God. There was absolutely no way out. I pulled into a field, jumped out, and started running. I had made it to the tree line when I finally gave up. I sat down and waited for the police to come and get me. Little did I know that this was God's answer to prayer that I had prayed just days before. His thoughts and plans are so much higher than ours. I was taken into custody and charged with 9 felony accounts: resisting arrest, possession of a controlled substance, tampering with motor vehicle, and 5 fraud charges from using the credit cards. I was in jail for around 3 months, and I was completely done using. I never felt that way before. The craving was gone. That was God. I was ready to get some help for the first time in my life, and that was God. I talked to my lawyers about going to Teen Challenge in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was very doubtful that the judge would let that happen considering everything that had went on. I knew then there was a chance that I could go to prison, and it scared me to death. While I was in jail, some ladies from the church would come to do a Bible study with the ladies that wanted to participate. At first, I didn't go only because I had to sleep it off. I had been doing meth for years, and my body was finally showing me that. I could barely get out of bed to use the bathroom. After about 2 weeks of sleep, I finally got up. My grandpa came to visit. I was so ashamed for him to see me that way. But all he said was, "Sis, I love you, and we're going to get through this." I'm not sure I had felt that kind of love before. The unconditional love that God gives, my grandpa was showing me that for the first time in my life. That very day, I went to visit with the church ladies. We had our Bible study. They asked at the end if there was anyone who wanted to ask Jesus into their heart and wanted to be a new person. That's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to be a new person, a person that people could actually look at and see the worth in them. I instantly started crying. God was speaking right to me, and I had never felt that before. I raised my hand. They said the sinner's prayer with me, and I instantly felt the change in my life. I felt like no matter what happened, things were going to get better. It's like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I knew that I would get the help that I needed and had no doubt that I was going to Chattanooga. But God had different plans. Finally went in front of the judge, not looking to talk about rehab, but just to get out of jail. My grandpa was there to support me, and that made things seem a little bit better. My maiden name was Man, so I waited for the M's to be called, and they never came up. Kind of started to freak out. He finally got to the end of the docket and called me up. I was the only one left in court that day. My attorney said to him that I was wanting to be released from jail and that I was trying to go to rehab in Chattanooga. The judge pondered for a long time. He then looked at me and said, "Miss Mann, I don't know why I'm doing this because you're looking at 64 years in prison, but I'm going to release you on your own recognizance." My attorney was shocked. He was for sure that I was staying in jail. I went to live with my grandparents for 7 months. I went to church with them and became really involved. That time in my life was so special. I had my grandparents to look at for an example of what a Christian should look like. I even went to some Celebrate Recovery meetings in Chillicothe, Missouri. That's where I first learned about the 8 biblical principles that we do in our step studies. I was starting to learn the principles, and I could see my outlook on life start to change. I was clean and sober for the first time in a really long time, and it felt wonderful. I was becoming who Jesus wanted me to be. I went in front of the judge about a month after being released. My attorney told him that I was wanting to go to treatment at Teen Challenge in Chattanooga. He was not okay with that. He didn't want me to leave the state. Man, was I let down. I had done all my stuff to go there, and I was ready. He said that if I could find a long-term treatment in Missouri, that he would consider letting me go. So that's what I did. I found Heartland. It was an 18-month faith-based treatment program for women in Northeast Missouri. I got everything ready. My attorney presented it to the judge, and the judge was willing to let me go. But I also had to complete 5 years of probation, and the felonies would still be on my record. My time at Heartland was one of the most difficult yet rewarding times of my life, or so I thought. God uses times like these to prepare us for even bigger struggles. I started learning the Bible, doing Bible studies, going to church 3 or 4 times a week. God slowly started to reveal himself to me. He was a good, loving, merciful God. I thought for years that he couldn't forgive a sinner like me, but was I wrong? He not only forgave me, he made me a daughter of the King. My shame started to go away the closer I got to him. I finished the program in August of 2010, but was supposed to complete in June. Our director thought it would be best to hold me back a while. I was really angry about this. I worked so hard to get to where I was, and I wanted people to see that. She simply said to me, "Who are you in Jesus?" I didn't know how to answer that at the time, so I started studying my Bible even more. About a month later, she asked me again, Who are you in Jesus? I still wasn't sure how to answer, but in tears, I simply quoted Psalms 139, 13 and 14. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. Still my favorite verse to this day. That's what she wanted to hear. She wanted me to know that I mattered to God, and that's really all that counted. I graduated the next month. Soon after, I went to work at the boarding school they had there for troubled teens. While I was there, I met my husband, who had also completed the Heartland program for men. We were married in July of 2012, and I had our first baby, Isla Jane, in August of 2013. God was giving me my life back. It was an amazing feeling to know He could take a wreck of a person like me and completely redeem and restore them was mind-blowing. In July of 2014, my husband got a job in Harlan, so we moved. It was hard leaving the people that I had grown to love and become family to me, but it was what was best for our family. That's when the depression set in. I didn't know anybody, I didn't have a job, and not that it wasn't a special time, but we were living with our in-laws. It's really hard for two families to be living in the same house. Soon we decided that we wanted to have another baby. We tried for about 8 months, and I just knew something was wrong. I went to see a doctor here in town, and he decided that he wanted to do exploratory surgery to see if he could see any problems. He went in and came right back out. My insides were a mess, so he sent me to Lexington to see a specialist. Come to find out, I had endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome. My left tube was completely closed, and my right tube was only partially open. He did what he could to fix the problems, but it was not enough. I would go on to do a year's worth of fertility treatment and another surgery for them to finally say that without IVF, there was no chance of me getting pregnant. It absolutely destroyed me. My depression quickly became worse. I was so mad at God for allowing me to go through this. My heart's desire was to have more children, and I couldn't understand why God would allow me to have that desire but not be able to fulfill it. I couldn't get out of bed. I could barely take a shower. All I could do was grieve. This was absolutely the worst pain I had ever felt. And on top of it, my grandpa died of Alzheimer's that year. I was so devastated. I would cry and plead with God to make those feelings go away. Or give me a baby. I felt like God was so far away. I went so far in my depression that I started cutting myself. I needed some relief from the emotional pain I was feeling. When that happened, Carter and I both decided that I once again needed some help. I went to a place in Lexington called The Ridge. It was a nice place that taught me some good coping skills, but what I really needed to do was to trust God. Not just with my past, but with my future as well. That was really hard to do because I had it all planned out, and it was not looking like what I had planned. I finally surrendered and asked God to forgive me for the way I had been acting. He then gave me a new hope, the hope of adoption. We started looking into adoption and quickly realized it was not in our budget. So we decided to become foster parents. Did all of our paperwork, finished all the classes, had 2 out of 3 of our home studies done, and we were looking to be placed with a child within a month. Then one morning, I got up, opened my Bible to Mark chapter 5. I started reading about the woman with the bleeding issue that knew if she could just touch Jesus' cloak, she would be healed. She did, and this is what he said to her. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. He was talking right to me. I could feel his spirit inside of me telling me that I was healed. It just so happened that I was to start my monthly cycle that day, and it hadn't come yet. It's like the story of Abraham and Isaac, where Abraham took Isaac to the mountain to be sacrificed. When God saw Abraham's faithfulness, he provided a way out by sending a ram. He wanted to see my faithfulness. 9 days went by and still no period. But my faith in what God had said to me was still very real. I believed he had healed me and that I was indeed pregnant. Over those 9 days, I took 12 pregnancy tests. All were negative. But I remained sure of what God had said. He was going to provide a way out. Finally went to the doctor. They instantly gave me a urine test. The nurse came into the room and confirmed that it was negative as well. My doctor still wasn't convinced, so we ordered a blood test. Around 20 minutes later, he came in and said that I was definitely pregnant. I can't even begin to describe the joy and awe of God in that room that day. It was just magnificent. I cried happy tears for the first time in a long time. I really feel like God was preparing me for those 5 years that we waited on our baby. He was preparing me to go through a pretty intense pregnancy and even more intense birth. Our sweet boy, Silas Carter Hendrickson, was born on June 15th, 2019, 8 weeks and 2 days before his due date. He weighed 3 pounds, 15 ounces. The first time I saw him in the NICU, I cried like a baby. He was so little and had so many wires and lines coming out of him. I can say this though, I wasn't scared. Maybe for the first couple of days, strictly because I wasn't with him. But I had a peace that only comes from God. After that, I was good. I knew what God had said to me, and I was clinging to that. All would be good. God would take care of him, and he did. Silas pulled out his own breathing tube the first night he was there and continued to amaze the doctor with improvements each day. We spent 5 weeks in the NICU and God showed up every single day. It was absolutely amazing. We somewhat recently started our step study for CR. Since starting it again, I continue to see the growth in my life and in my faith. I'm laying down old ways of thinking and focusing on God's truths. Step study and a good Christian counselor has helped with my depression tremendously. I can say that I have been depression-free for about 7 months now. That's a pretty long time for me, and it's something to be proud of. I can't thank God enough for the life he has given me. No matter what happens in life, I can stand on the fact that God is good. Thanks to Celebrate Recovery, I'm learning to walk the life Jesus wants me to walk. If you aren't in a step study right now, please talk with someone from our leadership team about when our next step study will start. It's not just for alcoholics and addicts. It's for anyone with hurts, habits, or hang-ups. That means depression, overeating, being too in control, finding self-worth, codependency, anxiety, fear, self-control, so on and so on. We want to help. I want to close with this. My testimony is one of restoration and redemption. If God can do this for me, he will do this for you. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future." Trust God. Trust his word. Surround yourself with godly, like-minded individuals. And most importantly, let your faith in God and his promises be stronger than anything else. Thank you for listening. I hope my testimony inspired or touched someone this evening. I would like to end tonight's meeting with the Serenity Prayer. If you know it, please repeat after me. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next.